serve on our dream team, we will be hosting a breakfast in your honor on Saturday, February 13th at 9 a.m. at Life Point Church. We will be celebrating our wins, casting vision, and meeting with our individual teams for training. Childcare will be provided. Join us outside on the patio at the tents after each service to meet our life group leaders and sign up for our winter-spring semester. Life groups begin the week of February 7th.
So desperate to find a way out of my world and finally breathe. From my eyes I saw my heart, it came to life. This ain't easy, it's not meant to be. Every story has its scars. When the pain I've only too sweet to you. And come whatever, I'll be the shelter that won't let the rain come through. Your love, it is my truth, and I will always love you. When the pain comes
lot of kissing in that intro there. Come on, somebody. It's about to be Valentine's Day next Sunday, guys. We're just trying to prep you for that. Trying to give you a heads up ahead of the game. Hey, we're so glad you're here. As you may be able to tell, we're about to start a brand new series on relationships. Thank you, Megan and Gilbert, for that incredible song. Rock that out, man. Fantastic. A couple things before we jump in today. My name is Danny Rivers, and I'm the lead pastor here at Life Point. And we just want to say thank you for being out here on a cold Sunday morning. Cold by our standards anyways. I had ice on my car today, which doesn't happen every day. And I'd be grateful if it never happens again. That'd be fine with me, because I'm not used to having to wait for my windshield to clear, but it's all good. Growth Track, which is a 3-step experience that we do here at Life Point for anybody who's interested in knowing more about our church or how to get plugged in. This is sort of the on-ramp, just to how you get going, and you find out who we are and what we're about, where we're going, and then how you can play a role in that if you want to. That happens every Sunday, rather. Step 1 is today. This is the time where we tell you about our church, about where we're going, where we're headed, and whether or not you might want to get plugged in with that. It happens right after the second service. Lunch and childcare provided, so we'd love it if you'd join us for that. Even if you're just curious, there's no strings attached. You just come in and check it out. Life groups are beginning. Some of them are beginning this week. And if you haven't signed up for one of those and you'd like to, right out on the patio when you leave today, there'll be some tents out there. You can get some more information. And then finally, next Sunday, right after both services, we're going to have about a 10-minute window to tell you about Haiti, our trip that we're going to be taking in June to Haiti. We go every year. We take a group of about 25 to 30 people down to Haiti, and we serve. If you're interested in that at all, even if you're just curious, once again, we'll be in this building right up here. Is called the library. We don't usually use it, but it's available to us, so we're going to use it next week. Again, we'll tell you all about it. We'll answer your questions and tell you if any questions you may have. We'll let you know about that. So check that out next week. So today, starting a brand new series, a relationship series called Better Together. And so over the next 4 weeks, what we'll be doing is we'll be looking not only at marriage, but just men and their role, and women and their role, and we're going to be talking to single people as well. We don't want to leave anybody out. We want to make sure that we offend everybody equally. Come on, somebody. Equal opportunity offender. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to try to offend you. But we do want to equip, and we do want to help people to experience the best possible, have the best possible experiences with relationships as they can. Now, here's what I know. When you're thinking about marriage, or when you used to think about marriage and now you're married, you don't think about it anymore, whatever the case is, there's all these expectations about what marriage is going to look like. And then what happens is, I think over our experiences, a lot of times what happens is our expectations and the reality of that are often two different things. And sometimes that leads to letdowns and disappointments and hurt, anger, and even sometimes the pain of divorce. And I know that in a room, and this is our second crowd of the day, but in a room of this size, that there are going to be people, whether I know your story or not, that have been so deeply wounded in a relationship that you are asking yourself now, is it even possible to have a great marriage? Is it even possible to have relationships that last because you've been burned on some level in a relationship? And I want to answer that question with, beyond any shadow of a doubt, emphatically, the answer is yes, it is possible. But I also want to offer this caveat that it's not likely if you do what everyone else in our society does. Like, let me say that again. It is absolutely possible to have lasting relationships, great marriages, but not likely, not probable if we follow after the patterns of our culture. So, with all that said, I want to jump into today's message. Now, I know that a lot of you guys don't know what I mean when I say back in the day, but some of y'all remember what back in the day is, right? Some of you, if you're under 25, you don't know back in the day. Come on, somebody. You don't know back in the day. Now, some of you are much older than me, so your back in the day looks totally different than my back in the day, because you're way older than me, because I'm super young and cool and whatnot, but I'm kidding. But for those of you who did not grow up with the technologies that we have now, like I didn't grow up. I mean, we didn't have a TV at my house. We just read books, like the paper, and you turn the pages, and right. But like for instance, with music, like Like back in the day, if you had a song that you liked and you didn't have the money to buy a tape or a CD or a compact, an 8-track or like old school for you records, phonograph if you're really old, live music, orchestral, like. But like if you found a song you like and you wanted to hear it again, you'd have to get another tape player, take it up next to your radio, and press record, and then just pray that nobody else came in the room and jacked up your song. Come on, somebody, you know what I'm saying? Like, some back in the day people in here. And like if your mom came and said, "What are you doing in there?" Then later on, when you're with your girl and your mixtape that you made, your mom would come in and go, "What are you doing?" right in the middle of it, and you'd get freaked out. Mixtape, anybody? Anybody made a mixtape? See, y'all, 25, y'all don't know about that. See, because you guys have grown up in a world like stuff like this, where you're just like, "Oh, I like that. I'll press Pandora or whatever, I don't know, and I'll listen to that and figure out what that means." Because back in the day, the DJ had to tell you who was singing the song. You didn't know who that was. Now you can just press a button. "Siri, who is this?" And she's like, "Oh, and here it is. And you can push this button and buy it." And from somewhere, the music is floating around it, and it comes onto your phone. Nobody else is boggled by that by me. I was at Starbucks up here the other day, and there's this guy I see there all the time, and he goes back and forth between the Shell station up here on the corner. He just goes back and forth all day long. And he's always got like a Gatorade or whatever. And so I get there at 6 in the morning the other day, and he's already there. And he's sitting there with his Gatorade. And so I go in there with my phone, and I'm like ordering my drink, and they just scan my phone. And it apparently just freaks the kid out. And he's like, "What was that?" He yells it out to the lady, and the lady's like real busy, and she's trying, because he's there all the time apparently asking questions, and he's like, "What was that?" She goes, "Well, that's an app," and he paid for that with his phone. And he sits there for a minute, and he goes, "Yeah, but where did the money come from? Where did the money come?" He's yelling it by this point, and I'm just cracking up because I was like, "That's a really good question. Where did the money come from? Where did it come from, and where did it go? You know, nobody knows. You know, see, y'all don't know about all that." Like, I can remember back in the day when my brother came home from the Navy at Christmas time and brought us our very first microwave. See, some of y'all didn't ever know that there was a time before microwave. Like you want to have a pizza, you have to put it in the oven and bake it forever, like a chicken pot pie. But now, you just jam it in there, and in like 2 minutes, it's ready to go. And some of y'all are so impatient, you're like drumming the table in 2 minutes, man. It's taking forever. You don't remember that. But what about this one? Back in the day, you wanted to get a family picture, right? How many of y'all remember family pictures? You got to match everybody, like you're walking through. And back in the day, you had to go to the mall to a place called Olin Mills. All matching with your mom, all pitiful, trying to hide. And you got to go in there, and there's somebody with an actual camera in this really ugly room. And the background's like mauve and blue, shades of green. Like depressing, right? Like bad wallpaper, and they take the picture of you. They don't even see it. They can't see how the picture looks. So like 8 weeks later, you get some proofs back. And then like 12 weeks later, you get them and you cut them out and you send them to grandma, and you've already graduated from college by the time But now, you just grab your phone, and then you're like, "Hey, everybody," picture. And then 5 seconds later, the whole world can see your pictures, because that's how technology moves. It's fast. And we live in this kind of instant gratification, technology-driven world, and we want things now. Like, one more right here. Remember back in the day when we had to go to a Blockbuster to get a movie? Remember that? Like, and then Redbox came out and wrecked the whole business and just destroyed the deal. But can I be honest with you? I'm too lazy to go to Redbox now, man. I'll stream something from iTunes or Amazon or Netflix. Ain't nobody got time to go down that 4 minutes to Valero. Come on. There might be somebody in line. I'll have to sit there and wait for that. Ain't nobody time for that. I'll just sit here and push a button. Care if it costs me $3 more, right? We're in an impatient society. Am I right? And often that impatience can become the enemy of great relationships. Jim Collins is a business guy, and he wrote this incredible book, classic book. I recommend you read it even if you're not into business. It's called Good to Great. And he says that good is the enemy of great. That sometimes in life, we miss out on the great things that are possible because we're in a hurry and we settle for good. So I want to talk to you about that. Moving from good to great, and not to try to be a settler. How many of you have seen this DirecTV commercial about the settlers? Anybody seen this besides me? Okay, well, here it is. Check it out real quick on the screen real fast.
Dear, why don't we switch to DirecTV?
Now, Mother, we are settlers. I've settled for cable all my life.
But DirecTV has been #1 in customer satisfaction over cable for 15 years.
We find our satisfaction elsewhere. The boy has his stick and hoop, the girl her faceless doll, and you have your cabbages.
And you have your foot stomping.
I sure do. Don't be a settler. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV.
You're welcome, DirecTV. We just helped you out here. Don't be a settler, right? Don't settle for average or below average when potentially great is available. But you have to realize that like anything that becomes great, it takes time to move from good to great. So when Jesus in the Gospels would teach, and he would grab for metaphors to help people learn how things grow over time, how things evolve over time. And when the writers of the New Testament, they wouldn't grab for quick type analogies. They would grab for things that generally had to do with agriculture. When they were trying to describe growth and how things evolve, they would typically have something to do with trees or with fruit or with vines or with fields of wheat or whatever. And we just did a whole series on that in January. But the idea was sowing and tending and caring for and then eventually reaping. And how many of you have ever planted a seed before in your life? You put a seed in the ground, right? It takes a while, right? Agriculture 101. Do you plant a seed in the ground and the next day there's a giant plant sitting there? Not unless you're Jack and the Beanstalk. Come on, somebody. Right? It takes time, and you have to water it, and you have to prune it, and you have to wait for it. And you might have to tend some weeds and care for it, but eventually the seed does what the seed does. Eventually, it grows and it bears fruit. But it takes time, and there's work involved. So, with that being said, in light of our series about relationships, let me get to the big idea today. Having a great marriage, and furthermore, any kind of great relationship, is not about what you say, but rather what you sow. There is no quick, instant thing involved here. It's about what you put in the ground and what you cultivate and what you tend to. Like anybody can say they want to have a great marriage or they want to have great relationships, but the trick is working that out. And you need to know this because, particularly if you're younger or you're thinking about marriage, because marriage can be very tough. Tough. Can I get an amen, somebody? Right? You can't just say you want it to be great. You actually have to work it out. Like in a world full of apps, they got an app for that. There is no app to fix my spouse. Come on, somebody. Not that my spouse needs fixing. Amen, somebody. But if there were, there isn't one, right? I could just zap her with this app while she's not looking, right? Or like if you could give him or her a pill that she'd be fixed and then the marriage would be perfect, like you'd be like when you give it to your puppy, you'd be jamming some peanut butter and slipping it to her real quick, or him, anybody? You pay a lot of money for that. But there's no such thing. Great relationships of any kind take time and work to build. Like single people in the house today. I don't want to leave you out here. Great relationships that will last the test of time. They take time to build. You can't just grab random guy or random girl because they're good looking, they got swag, or they got money or whatever, and think this is the one. You have to work at it day in and day out because great relationships are grown over time and with care. Because it's not about what I say, it's about what I sow. It's not about saying all the right things and being good at the game. It's about the right heart and the right motivations and the right intentions. So, this guy Paul, we call him the Apostle Paul. He comes along and he writes like 2/3 of our New Testament in our Bible. And he's talking about this idea, this idea of how things grow, and the law of the harvest. And he says in Galatians, if you have your Bibles, you can turn there with me. We're going to kind of focus in on this text. Galatians chapter 6, he says, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. In other words, you're not going to fake God out. Right? A man reaps what he what? What he sows. Whatever he or she puts into the ground, that's what's going to come back out. So, whoever sows to please their flesh, meaning that they have selfish intentions, selfish motivations, looking for pleasure. He says, from the flesh, from that motivation, will reap what? Destruction. Underline that in your Bible if you got it out. Okay? So he says, whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. And then this, let us not become weary in doing well or in doing good. For at the proper time, and then who decides what the proper time is in this context? It's God, right? The proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Now, a lot of pastors and preachers have taught this text, I have as well, as a kind of a harsh, kind of judgy kind of deal. Hey, you don't be deceived. You're gonna reap what you sow. But as much as it is a sort of judgment kind of a text, it's also equally a promise kind of text. Meaning, if you put the right stuff in the ground, the right stuff is going to come out. If you don't give up, if you don't get lazy or get weary when things are going well, and you don't give up, you will reap the right harvest at the right time. And in a relational sense, we're better together. What we're doing is worth working out. It's worth planting. It's worth sowing. It's so worth it if you put the right things into the ground. Now, let's just be real for a moment. Some of you may be in this room today and you may have a jacked up relationship at this point. But if both of you will start from this day forward and sowing the right things into the ground, you will reap a good reward if you don't give up. If you sow great seeds, if you plant things in the right soil, you will reap the right things. And now, let's get even more honest. There are times when in a relationship you might be the only one who is planting the right seeds. You might be dealing with someone who's planting the wrong seeds, and you have to, in those moments, trust God. Trust the timing, the law of the harvest, that God will bear good fruit in your life because you're doing the right things. So, as we're thinking about sowing versus saying, as we're thinking about good versus great, I think there are four things, and there's a myriad of things that we could talk about, but there are four things that every relationship will have to process on the way to becoming great. And the first one, and it's the one I'm going to spend the most time on so you can relax. Wow, he's got 3 more to go. Won't be that kind of deal. We'll go quick after that, I promise. This is first one, the word is disappointment. Every relationship will have to deal with disappointment along the way. And the bottom line, in particular in a marriage relationship, is what's happening is you're putting two sinners, right? Two people who are fundamentally flawed, who have brought baggage from their past and from their families of origin, and we jam in the same house and go, hey, live happily ever after, right? Well, this is not a recipe for sainthood. This is a recipe for uh-oh, you know what I'm saying? And some of you have been down that road. And I don't want to get too detailed here, fellas, but don't lie, right? Ever have one of those nights where you thought you're married and you think, it's going to be one of those nights, right? Wow, 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 wow. I'm feeling down. And instead it turned into one of those nights. Womp, 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 womp. Right? I don't know why I made that sound, but it felt right at the moment. Right? You're disappointed, right? Ladies, I don't want to leave you out here. You ever been disappointed in your man? Of course you have, right? You like ask him 743 times to do the same thing, and they're like, hey, I just let me finish. You know, I got this. I'll get it in just a minute. Right? You got like arthritic thumbs by now from pushing little buttons or whatever. I mean, disappointed. I'm going to keep this on the surface level because I'm not trying to get y'all all stirred up against one another. I'm trying to help. Now, and single people, can I just say to you that if you're dating somebody that you're consistently disappointed in, do not get married. Hey, It is what it is. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They can be helped, they can be changed, but not by you. Not by you. I don't care how smart, how talented, sophisticated, not by you. It is what it is. Now, let me tell you about disappointment. I remember reading, I think from Philip Yancey in one of his books. He was talking about a different context here, but he said, disappointment is the gap between what I expect and what I experience. And however big the gap is, the greater the degree of disappointment that I might experience. It's the gap between what I expect and what I experience. And the larger the gap grows, deep disappointment has the opportunity to grow in the soil of my life. And the way that gap grows in a relationship is when one of us or both of us begin to sow disappointment into the relationship. When we begin to actually look for ways in which the person that we're relating to is not living up somehow to our expectations. And if you sow disappointment into a relationship, you will reap disappointment from it, because no one will ever be able to live up to your expectations if they are not rooted in reality. Now, I bring all this up, and the reason I'm going to spend the most time on this point here today is because as a student pastor and as a pastor for all of these years now, I've had the opportunity to counsel with people who are in crisis in their relationships. And typically, not always, typically what I find is that somebody is deeply disappointed that their expectations weren't being met. And sometimes completely legitimately and rightfully so. But oftentimes it was because they just didn't understand. They thought it was going to be this, she was going to be this way, and I thought he was going to be this way, and I thought the relationship was going to look like this, and then in fact it looks completely different, and I don't know how to process and to deal with that. So I want to deal with this now, because it's the reason why we do premarital counseling here, because we want to help people get clear on their expectations so they know what they're getting involved with. So I want to think for a minute about expectations and the relationships to disappointment and the capacity that they have to disrupt any relationship. See, when we're in dating or engaged or even very early on in a marriage, we come to the relationship with this whole box full of desires, right? We have dreams and we have wishes and hopes that we just are planning for to be part of our future, like what kind of house we'll live in and how big it will be and where it will be located. And we think about how many kids we want to have and that the fact that they'll be perfectly well-adjusted and well-behaved, which is like a total psych, you know what I'm saying? Not really, right? How many kids we're going to have. And we think about the certain roles that our spouse is going to fulfill, like, well, she's going to do all the laundry because that's what my mom did, right? And he's going to do all this stuff because that's what my dad did. And then he'll be thinking, like, man, I'm going to make a lot of money, and one day I'll be able to drive whatever kind of car I want. She won't even care. See, that's another one of those things. It's just not true. We dream about how we're going to schedule our lives and how much time we're going to spend together as a couple, and we're going to do all these things, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be adventurous, and not that it's not, right? But and then we think about where we're going to go for the holidays, or we're going to go Thanksgiving here and Christmas here, and we do all of these things. All of these desires are formed generally from our environment that we grew up in, our family of origin. If it was a great family of origin, we had a great experience, then we're like, hey, my mom always did this, and so this is what we're going to do. And my dad always did the finances in my house, so that's what you're going to do. Well, like, I stink at finances. Well, too bad. My dad did it. He was awesome at it. So therefore, you have to do it too, right? And if it was a bad family of origin, we had bad experiences, then we will use that as a way of justifying our expectations or our desires. And then men, your list is fairly short. You're just like, well, you're worried about what your wife will or won't wear to bed, right? You're like, and sorry, ladies, you're thinking it won't matter what you wear. But it's so warm and cozy and fuzzy, and he's like, nobody wants fuzzy, you know what I'm saying? Like, and at first he'll say that he just wants you to be comfortable, but he's lying, man. He wants you to wear that thing, that thing that he. Anyways, I'm just gonna stop right there. So we all come to marriage. These desires, men are very simple and ladies might be more complex. I don't know. Now, here's the thing: you can't help that, right? You don't know what you don't know. You're dreaming about what you want. It's normal. We have desires. We have dreams, wishes. And then we get married, and then we go down the altar, and maybe it's at the altar that we start to recognize, oh, wait a minute, something's different, right? Maybe it's at the honeymoon, or a week, or a month, or even a first year. We begin to do something subconsciously that impacts the dynamic of the relationship. Without ever really knowing why or understanding what's happening, we eventually begin to take all of these, in many cases, legitimate desires. This is what my dad did, this is what my mom did, this is what they didn't do that I thought they should have done. This is what I expect from my spouse. And we take desires and we move them over into the expectation category, right? I mean, my dad always did it this way. My mom always did it this way. And this isn't this what a woman does? And isn't this what I can expect from a husband? And we begin to move all these things out of the desire category into the expectation category. Meaning, not just what I wish for, but this is what I expect to happen. Different. How we want our marriage to look financially, how things are going to be romantically, who's going to do what in the home, how much there's going to be, how much money there's going to be, how the whole thing's going to be scheduled. And we transition these things from desires into a different category, and desires, even good ones, even normal ones, become what? They become expectations. And these expectations can be tricky things. And the attitude that they can elicit in us towards somebody that we love or loved and cared about over time, these expectations can become very devastating. When they're in the desire category, meaning I hope this stuff happens, they're okay. When they move over into the expectation category, particularly when they're not rooted in reality based on who this person is, not what societal norms might be, they can lead into all sorts of dysfunction and disappointments. Remember when we read in Galatians where Paul says that whoever sows to the flesh, whoever sows in a selfish, self-centric way, from that flesh, from their desires, from their self-centered ways, they will reap destruction. Remember, we're talking about how things grow, that they grow over time. And good things grow over time, but so do bad things. That if for a while they don't seem such a bad deal, but over time, as they mature, as they become what they're going to become, they can be destructive. And we can't afford then to be selfish and self-centered and expect great marriages or great relationships. And if we ever get to the point where we have a marriage that's centered around expectations, the intimacy, the romance, and all the stuff that makes a marriage sort of magical, under the pressure of our expectations, they begin to evaporate. They begin to flee, right? And then disappointment comes in, and then we become settlers. Good, or below average, or average instead of great. We take a marriage when expectations rule our home. We take a marriage that's built on a divine covenant with God. Like it's this and then it's that. And then we move into this contractual type thing where there has this debt and debtor dynamic. And here's how that looks. Like, you're the wife. This is what wives do, so you owe me this. You're the husband. This is what husbands do. You owe me this. And this is what husbands do. This is what wives do. And as long as there is this debt-to-debtor relationship, it begins over time. Not at first, but it begins over time to squeeze out the potential for receiving or even expressing unconditional, unattached love. Like there's no strings attached. Because love is a gift. And love, with all of its byproducts, is meant to be a gift. And if everything is expected, like this is what's coming my way, whether you want it to happen or not, there's no opportunity to give joyfully or freely. And it begins to rob us of the joy of giving. It begins to rob a man of the joy of providing. Above and beyond, if it's just something that is expected and never appreciated. And many of those desires are legitimate. And many of them are normal. But the minute, listen to me, the minute that I take a desire, even if it's a well-intentioned desire, and I place it on the shoulders of my wife, that desire suddenly begins to feel like a burden and an expectation. And I begin to relate to Rachel as though she owes me now. And if she can't deliver, if she doesn't deliver on my expectations, then disappointment has a foothold. And as Paul says, when the expectation is derived from selfish ambition or self-interests, it has the capacity to destroy. And then to go a layer deeper than that. When we put expectations on our spouse that only God can fulfill, we're setting them up to disappoint us immediately because we've put them at an idol, at a God-like level in our lives. We put them at a level that only God deserves, that only God can handle. When we try to make the spouse or our boyfriend or our girlfriend or our fiance the one instead of God, what we're doing is we're idolizing them. And it starts out simple, right? Oh, you're going to make me happy. Oh, you complete me. Oh, I feel so good when I'm around you. Without you, I'm nothing. And if you ever left me, I would fall apart and I could never be. And what we're doing is we're putting undue pressure, God-like pressure, on a person who is incapable of meeting those kinds of needs. And people do this all the time. We start out idolizing them, but then when they let us down, and people always will because we're human beings, we let each other down, we sin against one another. We will get deeply disappointed in them because they in fact aren't God, and they can't in fact handle the weight that we put on them. And we go from idolizing them to demonizing them. Right? We go from idolizing or demonizing our spouse when we put our spouse into a role that only God can fulfill. When we put expectations on them derived from selfish interests or selfish ambitions, and then we say they didn't meet my standards, we begin to demonize them. So here's how it works. From the beginning, we start out in a relationship, we think, oh, the little quirks that she has are super cute, man. Like, she's so organized, she's so on top of things, and after a while it turns into, she's such a control freak, right? Come on. She only wants things her way, man. Everything's got to be perfectly her way. Nag. Drives me crazy. Idolized and demonized. Right? All right, I don't want to leave the dudes out. When you get married, ladies, you're like, oh, he's so laid back, and he comforts me, and he's just so easygoing. Over time, expectation gets applied, and all of a sudden it's like he's so passive, he never does anything, he's not a leader. What a failure he is, right? Idolize, demonize. Boom. See, and when the marriage becomes all about, or any relationship becomes all about what you owe me and what I owe you, then it's a partnership, like a business partnership. It's contractual. And here's the thing. Over time, you can't express this. You don't recognize this for what's happening. But a lot of us have been in a situation where we go, man, something's wrong. Nobody's cheated. Nobody's done anything untoward. But something's not right because we're not living unconditionally. We're not loving unconditionally. We're not making anybody's dreams come true. We're just trying to measure up to their expectations. There's no opportunity to make your dream come true because your dream is not a dream. It's an expectation. And there's a weight attached to it. And there's a burden attached to it. And there's a contractual kind of thinking attached to it. So it sets us up for deep disappointment. Here's the question. What does your spouse owe you? Ladies, what does your husband owe you? Men, what does your wife owe you from your perspective, from, in your opinion, based on how you've done marriage, from what you've been operating from? Think about that. Huge question. What do they actually owe you? What would cause the disappointment that you've experienced with them? And I'm not talking about they went out and did some terrible thing. That's a whole other deal. But I'm saying just in terms of normal relationships, what would cause the disappointment that you feel in them to sort of go away? Have you ever considered the possibility that what you're putting on them is unfair and they cannot live up to it? Because if you don't think about these things, you'll never move from good or average or below average to great. So here's what I'm saying. From this day forward, even if you've gotten this wrong in the past, can we just realize that it's not about what we say, it's about what we sow. And I don't care what your track record has been up till now. Can we move the expectations back into the desire category? And can we live just with a heart of gratitude for what our spouse already does now? Can we begin to appreciate the small things that they do right now that we've taken for granted and we take as part, that's just part of the package, it's part of the deal, but is it? And can we breathe life? Can we speak life in the forms of appreciation and gratitude and a heart of gratefulness? Man, you are so, what you do, man, that stuff that you do, thank you so much. You don't have to do that, but thank you that you care like that. And something about that just has a way of lifting. Instead of the expectation, which has a way of pressing down. Second word that you'll have to go through, these are going to move fast now, is the word dedication. And let me just start by saying, when I talk about dedication, I'm not just talking about the dedication that we have to have for each other. That's paramount as well, but let me deal with that in a second. I'm saying that for a Christian marriage to be great, God has to be your number one, and your spouse has to be number two, right? This is one of the most important foundational principles of having a godly, great marriage, that God has to be your number one. And some of you push back on that right away. But listen to me. A guy comes to Jesus one day in the Gospels, in Matthew's Gospel, and he says, hey, what's the great commandment? And Jesus does not say, love your spouse with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, right? He doesn't say that. In fact, he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And then the second one is, love your neighbor as you do yourself. God has to be number one. That's the sort of linchpin that everything else has to hang off. Matter of fact, he goes on and says that all of the law and all the prophets, all the stuff from the Old Testament, it's all sort of foundational to this principle. Like it's all hanging, he says, from this. Number one, your dedication to God has to be real and authentic. And your marriage has to be centered around that idea that God's number one in your life. But dedication with each other is critical in any lasting relationship. And those of you who are married and have been for a while, you know this. There are wow days. Wow. Whoa, it's incredible in marriage. And there are vow days. Come on, somebody. Like, wow days, she did it all right, he did it all right, got me jewelry, took me on a special trip, made my favorite meal, wore that thing, whatever that thing, not the other thing, but this thing. Like, wow days. And then there's other days that are vow days, where the only thing that keeps you running back home to mama, or just getting in the car and driving till you run out of gas and saying, this is where I'm going to live from now on, never going back, are vows. Dedication. Dedication is what keeps you together in those moments, and everybody has these moments. And if you sow dedication into your marriage, what do you think you get to reap? Dedication. Sometimes that dedication may not come from your spouse. That's the bad part of it. But the dedication will always come from the one who's watching out over you and guiding you through this stuff. And dedication is the thing that is missing from so many relationships today. That dedication goes beyond the contractual relationship where, yeah, you do this and I do this and we take care of the business and you handle this part of the family, I handle this part of it. It goes beyond that. As we've already talked about, dedication comes from the fact that when you got married, if you got married as a believer, you got married in a church probably, and you got married with somebody saying, hey, in the eyes of God, we're making a covenant together. And a covenant is a whole other animal than a contract. Because a covenant is a sacred vow. It's a solemn oath, not Solomon. Right? It's a declaration of my heart and soul. It shall be so. And when you operate your marriage from that perspective, it helps guide you through the tough times when disappointment is a real part of your life and when you really would like to just run for the hills. There's this passage in Genesis chapter 2. It's a sort of foundational principle when it comes to marriage. And it says, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And I just want you to remember this as it relates to dedication. Leave and cleave. Right? That's a bumper sticker for you. Put on your back of your car. Leaving, and when he's talking about leaving, he's talking about leaving home, but he's also talking about a deeper layer. Sometimes when we leave and we cleave to our spouse, we have to leave behind some old ways and some old commitments and some lesser commitments, some hobbies that maybe have taken over our lives or have made our spouse to feel like they've been knocked down a peg or two. And sometimes it means even leaving some old friendships, because let's be honest, some friendships that aren't helping us be dedicated. Because what I've seen many times is when a marriage or relationship is in crisis, one or both will run back to their friends. And often the friends that they choose to run back to are the ones who will tell them what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. And oftentimes the words that they're speaking are not words of wisdom, but they're words that are coming from a place of their own brokenness, their own hurtful experiences. And they're not helping dedication be part of our lives. And if you want to go from good to great, you have to occasionally do an inventory. Like, are the things that I'm involved with, are the habits, the relationships that I'm having, they draw me closer to my spouse, or they taking me away. Because Solomon says, in the Song of Solomon, he says, it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. It's the little things that we do that we shouldn't do. It's the little things that we don't do that we should be doing that over time can destroy the vines. Leave and cleave. Fellas, make your wife your best friend. Work at that. Might be hard, right? But work at that. Ladies, start communicating like never before. Work on your marriage. Seek to make it better. And God will help you along the way. The third word, and this is like a 2-second word, is the word decision. Like you have to go from this day forward. Like I know we've been doing it this way, but today I'm going to decide to do it well, to do it right. Back to Jim Collins' book again. He says, greatness is not a function of circumstance. Meaning, greatness doesn't just happen. It doesn't just grow by itself. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter, he says, of conscious choice and discipline. And that's our fourth word, the word discipline. We think about discipline as it relates to any great endeavor. Becoming a great musician takes discipline. Becoming a great athlete takes discipline. Having great finances, it takes discipline. You can't just run willy-nilly and spend and get crazy. It takes discipline. We understand that intrinsically. We understand that. But we don't think about it when it comes to relationships, that it takes discipline to have great marriages. We have to be intentional about it. Because here's the deal. Let's be honest, after you've been with someone for a while, and the new and the shiny starts to wear off, it's easy to become settlers again. You have your cabbages. I have my footstock. Right? We get settled in, and I get that. I understand why. We're comfortable in our own skin. We are who we are. We know that. We still love each other. And there's something nice about that. There's something good about that. But that has also within it the potential to lose something great in the process. And we lose something along the way because we stop sowing the same right things that got us together in the first place. We get lazy in a relational way. Remember what Paul said? He said, do not get weary in doing well. Another way you can phrase that is, don't get lazy just because things are going well. Right? See, our tendency is when things are going well, when all the fires have been put out, we just go, all right, let's just rest a while. But no, in fact, that's the time to get intentional. That's the time, ladies, listen to me, and men, this is the time to have the conversations you've been avoiding because you didn't know what they were going to do. Like for my wife and I, when things are going really, really well, a lot of times this is the time I'll say, you know, babe, here's some stuff, there's something about our relationship that bothers me. I haven't brought it up till now, but I'm going to bring it up now. Can we have a conversation about this? And because we're doing well, and we're not lazy doing well, we're not interested in just doing well. We want to be great. We want to move from good or average to great. We want to be the best we can be. And I think that I can find out that this is what God's plan for my life is. That I have he says, John 10:10, life abundantly. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Like there's just a spiritual component to why relationships have a hard time. There's a spiritual attack on the family and on relationships. But Jesus says, no. Listen, I know that's his plan, but I've come that you would have life abundantly. Don't get lazy just because things are going well. I want abundant life. And some of it, we know that we can get into a bad cycle where we're just kind of drifting. Just kind of feeling stuck. And we're not really trying to do the things that help us sort of get together in the first place. And relational discipline is often what separates good marriages from great marriages. We're not carving out time to have date nights like we used to. Like when we do, we drag our kids with us, right? Don't you love that when you go to a nice restaurant? Sorry if you have small kids and you did this last night. And then you're like trying to have a conversation and a pile of mashed potatoes comes flying and splats in the face. It kind of ruins the moment, you know what I'm saying? Screaming and yelling. Anyways, just moving right along. Grab a babysitter is all I'm saying. They make these things, right? We're people, right? We're not spending intentional time talking about things that really matter and, listen to me, in a calm and constructive way. We wait until the heat's on. We wait until the pressure's on, and then we drop a bomb on the relationship. And why did it blow up? Don't get weary and think when things are doing well. This is the moment to sow the right seeds. We're not willing to go talk to a counselor when we get stuck and can't move on. There's some shame in that. No, there's not. Like you take your car to a mechanic when it's broken down. You go to the doctor when you're hurting or when something's not right. But somehow when it's up to a relationship, I ain't wasting money on that. I'm not going to sit down with that. She ain't going to tell me what to do. No, don't be like that. Right? We're not willing to hold hands or take walks or take drives. We don't write notes anymore. And some of you are like, dude, why did you just say that? Now I got to write notes when I get home. I'm terrible at it too, man. Just shoot her a text. I'm kidding. We stop saying nice things about each other. Right? We'll be the first to offer critique when things they don't look the right way, but we'll be the last one to say something nice when things do look the right way. And oftentimes what will happen is somebody else will say the nice thing that you should have said. We're just flowing in the rhythm of life, and sometimes that's okay, and I get that, but we forget that it's important to sow good seeds into our marriages, into our relationships. Because listen, if I sow nothing, then nothing comes out. If I sow good, then good comes back out. And if I want to have a great marriage, and if I want to have great relationships, whether that's with my family or my friends or my coworkers or my children or my parents, then I have to sow the right things. It's about not what I say, but it's about what I sow. And greatness happens over a long period of time of sowing and taking care of the right things. So let me just finish with this and I'm done. What if in your marriage, those of you who are married, what if you stop trying to fix each other? And just acknowledges that maybe we're going to live a life that we're just broken together. You ever heard that song on the radio, the Christian song? Broken Together or something like that? I don't remember how it goes exactly, but what if we just say, you know what? Let's be honest, I'm never going to be exactly all that you think that I was going to be. Or maybe you're not going to be exactly what I hoped and thought you could be either. And that's not we're not trying to denigrate one another. We're just being honest. Like, look, I thought, but you know what I realized? Man, what we have is awesome. It's not exactly the way I looked at it, but man, we've been doing the right thing over time. And what if we just stop trying to fix each other and we just realize, man, it's okay if we're just broken together. Not that we're gonna not work on our stuff. We're gonna work on us. So instead of trying to fix each other, we're gonna offer allowances for each other. Great, not doormat, not get run over, not be trampled. We're gonna allow the fact that we're just different than each other in some areas. I find that some of the greatest relationships that I've ever witnessed are being experienced by people who are so different from each other. Right? They don't just stop being who they were. They're so different, but they've learned how to be broken together. We're going to love each other. We're going to trust each other. We're going to be grateful. We're going to move out of the I expect and you owe me to. I'm so grateful for who you are, for how you do, how you roll. Unless they're crazy and then you just bust a cap and then get over with it. You didn't see that one coming. Don't do that for real, because then I can go to jail for telling you to do that. I'm going to jail. Here's the last thing. Intentions are good. What if we just changed, man? What if we just said, you know what? Like, we've been doing it this way. We've been sowing this into the ground. Where's this got us? Where's this gotten us? What if we just said, you know what? If we tried something new? What if we agreed together to try something new? But what if we agreed that from this day forward, we're going to put God first? No, it's not about my way. It's not about my way or the highway. Put God first. God, would you have your way in my life? God, would you be first in our marriage? God, would you be... And we don't just say that, but we sow that. Hey, babe, we're going to pray together. Hey, we're going to grab the family around and we're going to look at this YouVersion Bible app thing, and we're going to read it. We're going to read a devotion together as a family. We're going to sow that into our families, and we're going to sow that into our relationship. I don't know what to say. They have an app for that, right? In this case, they actually do. We read the scriptures together, and we sow God first in our relationships. And over time, if we don't give up, we begin to reap a right harvest. It's not about what you say. It's about what you sow. It's not about having all the right words. It's about what you actually do at the end of the day. That's how we move from good to great. Amen, somebody? Hey, would you stand with me? I want to let you go here in just a second. I'm going to pray over you first. Here's my hope today, okay? You're about to go experience Super Bowl madness. Even if you hate it, you're going to eat like crazy amounts of buffalo wings. Like if you have some really good ones, could you hook a brother up? That's all I'm saying. I have a sick child at home, and I don't know what's going to happen to me, you know. You all be partying, I'll be at home like flu in it, you know. Got flu going on in my house. Bring a brother some wings. While you go off into the festivities of this national holiday, which is centered around football somehow, women, some of you are resenting it, some of you are like, whoa, no, I love this part, you know. Whatever it is, whatever your case is, would you not forget this? Would you not forget this? That if I'm going to move from good to great, I can't just expect it to happen. I can't just hope it happens. I have to actually go and examine it. Hey, what am I doing? What am I expecting from my spouse? What have I been putting in the ground? What have I been sowing? And then why am I'm always confused. I'm always concerned about the fruit. I'm always concerned about the harvest, but I'm not thinking about what I've put into the ground that's producing this harvest. You can't just examine the fruit, you got to examine the root. Take some time out this week. And listen to me, last thing. If it's over your head and you realize that I'm over my head here, I don't know what to do, we're past that, please talk to somebody. Shoot us an email. We have a whole list of great people that we've vetted, that we love, that we appreciate, that help people get, just like you and me, people just like us, regular people, get through this kind of stuff. You don't know what you don't know. You can't see in your blind spot unless somebody goes, hey man, there's a car coming. Don't try to fight this out on your own. Get some help. If you want to go from good to great, you probably won't be able to do this on your own. Amen, somebody? So bow your heads and pray with me. Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for Galatians 6. Thank you for the law of the harvest, which seems like a farmer's thing, but no, it's true of all of life. You reap what you sow. And I just pray that we would go with that sort of foundational truth in our lives today and examine Galatians, that passage again in light of our own relationships with our kids, with our friends, with our coworkers, with our parents, with our spouses, our romantic relationships. I just pray that we would see that if we've been sowing selfishly, that we're going to have to understand that Paul says that reaps destruction over time. That if it's let to go over a long period of time, it will reap destructive things, damaging things. But I pray that we'd have an others first, a God first mentality, and then an others second mentality, Lord, that you just birth this in us, oh God, that we would have great marriages and great friendships and great relationships. And I pray over the next 3 more weeks, God, that as we begin to unpack this deeper and we go in some different ways as well, that you would just let this be a time of renewal and refreshing and help. God, we started this church wanting to help people, genuinely wanting to help people figure this out, navigate this. Would you help us, God? Would you give us the wisdom and the grace to do this, I pray. In Jesus' name, everybody said, amen. Hey, God bless you. Have a great day. Bump fish, shake hands, hug, whatever you do. Say hello. Go whatever team you're rooting for today.